Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my shop. Today's video is wood turning for beginners, the diamond parting tool. One of what I consider to be the essentials. Not terribly sophisticated, but we're going to show you how to sharpen it and how to use it. Stay with us. I'm Rob Cosman and welcome to my shop. We make it our job to help take your woodworking to the next level. If you're new and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Hit the notification bell so you'll receive alerts when we release a new video. And anytime we use a special tool, we'll always leave a description down below. All right, let's get to work. I've got three parting tools here. These two are the same, in fact, the exact same brand. This is called a diamond parting tool because it has somewhat of a diamond shape, somewhat modified. Wider in the middle, narrower at both ends. Now, this is the old style, which is uniform thickness all the way through. Not nearly as effective. The nice thing about the diamond parting tool is that because the cutting edge is right at the widest point, there's lots of relief angle underneath, so it doesn't jam nearly as much. Now, I shape mine a little bit differently. You'll know this is one I haven't used, the way it's sharpened versus the way this one is sharpened, which allows you to get a little more of a better cutting edge, and I'll explain that when we actually go over to grind it. But the first thing we want to do is go over, talk about grinding equipment, go through the process of sharpening this, and then we'll come back to the lathe and show you how it's used. If you've seen any of my videos on sharpening, in particular lathe chisels, you've heard me talk about the CBN wheel. If you're seeing this for the first time, I have to explain it because you can do things on this wheel that you just can't do, or I should say, they're going to be extremely awkward and difficult to do on a traditional wheel. So this CBN wheel cuts extremely fast, cuts very cool, is well balanced, not well balanced, it's perfectly balanced. You just put it on, tighten up the nut, and away you go. If you've ever mounted a traditional grinding wheel, you know how much friggin' you can do to try to get that thing to run somewhat true. You never have to true this up. It's we have three cutting surfaces. Actually, we have this one custom made for us. It's available on our site, but we have 80 grit abrasive on this side, the face, and on that side, so we get to use all three. Now, you may say, well, why do you need the sides? Well, sometimes you want to be able to work against a flat surface as opposed to having the radius, or what we would call the hollow grind effect. I'm using a Wolverine grinding jig, and I think this is the best grinding jig you're going to be able to find. It mounts to the base instead of the grinder, so it'll work on any grinder. If you need to, you can pad it up or pad your grinder up, whatever it happens to be. It's got a big, thick platform. It's 1/4 of an inch thick. That too acts as a great heat sink, and that's something I forgot to mention. This big hunk of steel acts as its own heat sink, so when you're grinding, a lot of the heat gets absorbed here instead of into the tool. As far as a grinder, I'm using a Delta. It's a variable speed, but to be honest, I never change it. Whether it was turning at the slow speed, which is 1725 RPM, or if it was a 3450 high speed. Like I said, it doesn't really matter. It's not, I don't think it's that important. All right, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the shape of this. Now, I have the very good fortune of being Dale Nish's assistant for the best part of 5 years. And Dale's a world-class wood turner. May he rest in peace. And I just had an incredible opportunity to be his assistant and learn. So what we're going to do, here's the way they come. But he showed me how to modify it. So if you look at the cutting angle on here, this is the piece of stock turning, and there's how you're cutting it. What we're going to do is we can improve it a little bit by coming in here and lowering this. So we've removed 4 or 5 degrees off of the top of this, which is going to make it that much sharper. And then we can actually come in here. If you want to stiffen this edge up, you could change this angle a little bit as well. And it'll just make it last a little bit longer because you've got more metal behind the cutting edge. You want to make sure that your actual cutting edge is right at the widest point of the chisel. Now, they grind it so it tapers off from the center, so you got to make sure that where you meet this radius and this one is right there on that point. Now, typically, if you're using a regular grinding wheel, you're going to have to dip this in the water a lot to keep it cool, and you're only going to have a few seconds of grinding between having to go in and make those changes. But with the CBN wheel, I can get away with quite a bit more. So first thing I'm going to do is decide on the angle I'm going to do here. So I'm going to, this all works off of a cam, so this lever over here, you just loosen it one way, move it in and out, and then lock it. And here, this slips into any position you want, loosen it, find your angle, and snug it up. So I'm going to set it down like so, and then use the side profile, and that's actually pretty good right there. And I always want to keep that tool rest as close to the wheel as possible to offer lots of support. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind away at this until I bring, or I have a nice, smooth, continuous radius from here right up into that point. Now, even though this cuts really fast and really cool, you still have to go with a fair bit of caution to avoid burning the steel. And I move it side to side just to even out the wear. That CBN abrasive lasts a long time, but if you're just going to work one spot, obviously you're going to dull it faster than the rest of the area. Now, you probably don't want to watch all of this because I'm going to carry, like I said, this is a new chisel and I'm modifying it to suit me. You don't have to do it this way, but I'm going to grind that until that bottom comes all the way down to here. I want to show you how I do this just to make it so that you get consistent results. I'm almost there. So my finger is resting against the edge of this, which is another reason why I really like this tool rest. Far enough away that you can actually use your hands as somewhat of a jig. So this hand and thumb is keeping it pressed here so that it does not ride up on the wheel. And this is kind of my gauge as to how far in to go. And once I get it, I'm literally following with my finger along here, and that helps to apply the correct amount of pressure, which is always lighter than you would expect. Now, over the course of doing this, I've stopped and dipped the tool in the water a couple of times, but it never got hotter than what I could hold. Probably didn't even need to do it. All right, we'll call that good. Now, let me shut that off for a second. We're going to go in and start. We got a lot of metal to remove, but remember, I'm shaping this to suit my style way of doing it, and sharpening after this is just going to be a matter of a light touch-up. So I'm going to go in from here and come way back. So I'm going to have to turn or adjust that tool rest to hold it up like this. Okay, I'm going to do it on this side because I can see a little bit better. So that's about where I want it. Lock that. Get a little closer for better support. Check it again. And that works, but that's a lot of material to remove. Now, another way you can do this is just pivot until I get close. And again, we're just spreading the wear out so we're not working on one part of the stone excessively. Okay, if you look real close, you can see that I haven't quite got right to that line. Got to do that on both sides. And if you were to look like this, you can see how the tip shapes somewhat like that. I need to have the actual tip the widest point. So when you get this close, you got to just start being a little more careful. And if I went too far with this, I could simply come back to this and grind back down. Again, you want the point to be right at the widest spot of the chisel. I think that is there. It is. Okay, and like I said, I don't need to worry any more about that, and I can go right from there to the wood. So these are outside calipers, and this is what I would consider to be an essential tool to use in conjunction with the parting tool. So what I want is I want that to be cutting just above center, so that's a little bit too high. I'll drop the tool rest down. Make sure that's locked. Go a little bit lower still. So, if I was wanting to turn this down to a set diameter, I would take my calipers, and I would always set them a little bit wider than what I want, because you got to allow for cleanup. So if I wanted it down to, let's say, 7/8 of an inch. So I'm a little wider than 7/8. Now you might not feel comfortable doing it this way at first, but you've got a lot of leverage with this tool. What you're going to do is simply go in there and just make that cut nice and clean. So the way I would do it is, I reach across with my other hand. Actually, this is in the way. Let me come out here. I reach across here like this. Actually, I went too far. Holding the calipers lightly, just keep forcing that on until it eventually slips over. Now, they will flex, so you got to have a light touch on this. And what you would do is go along. If that was going to be if I wanted to make that into a dowel, that same width, then every inch or so, depending on how good you are with the skew chisel, I'd go in and I would set myself depth, and then come back and simply clean up between them, and there you go. You can also come up here and cut into a square stock. It's not hard at all. It's an easy tool to use. It's scraping, not shearing. Always want your tool rest to be close to offer the best leverage to the tool. Now, this is a little bit precarious. I wouldn't do that on square stock. Just work your way in. Nice and clean. You can also use it if you want. Sometimes if I'm turning a dowel, or I'm turning something and it's going to go into a round hole, in other words, I want to turn a dowel on the end, you can come in and you can use the parting tool to create that dowel. Now you're scraping. You can also come in and clean up a shoulder. That's the reason why you want to keep it nice and sharp. And then you can also use it to part it off. I'm not going to do that here, but at least I won't go all the way. Go down as comfortable as you, depending on the thickness of the stock. And then you could go over and finish it off with the bandsaw. So that's your parting tool. I also showed you this one, which would essentially be sharpened the same way, but this is a small parting tool for doing tiny work. It's not going to make that much of a difference in pine, but in hardwood, it's really nice to have that diamond shape so that your cutting edge is at the widest point and you've got lots of relief behind that cutting edge. There you go. Let me know if in watching this it brings up questions that we didn't answer, and we'd be happy to do that for you in another video. If you like my work, if you like my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos to help take your woodworking to the next level. And I've always said better tools make it a whole lot easier. If you click on the icon with the plane and the chisel, it'll take you to our website, introduce you to all of our tools, and also talk to you about our online and in-person workshops. Good luck in your woodwork.